Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Zelensky, about the president of Ukraine. He was interviewed by CNN, and Zelensky stated that he wants nuclear weapons and missiles as a compensation for Ukraine not being accepted into NATO. Give us nuclear weapons and missiles in such quantities that we can stop Russia, he told CNN. We have to defend ourselves with something if we wait decades before joining the alliance. Zelensky also believes that if Ukraine is not accepted into NATO, Russia should return its territory, since, according to him, it invaded in order to prevent Kyiv from joining the alliance. Very interesting logic was shown by the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, and today we got the first reaction from the Minister of Defense, from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation. Russian Foreign Minister spokesperson Maria Zakharova called Zelensky maniac. Zelensky's latest statements about his desire to possess nuclear weapons reveal him as a maniac who sees the planet as an object of his sick fantasies. That was stated by the Russian side. Few more interesting statements made by Zelensky. He revealed the number of losses. Zelensky stated that Trump previously named an almost tenfold higher figure for losses. Zelensky stated that Ukrainians lost just 45 people dead and 390,000 people wounded. So the numbers are very interesting, because 2 months ago Zelensky stated that the losses in December were around 43,000 people. Now in the beginning of February it's already 45,000. So according to Zelensky, during 2 months of clashes in the Pokrovsk direction, during 2 months of clashes in the Sudzha area and many other directions where the Russians advancing in Velika Novosilovka and many other places, the Ukrainians lost just 2,000 soldiers. Obviously something is wrong with these numbers. And another important information we got today, that the ban on striking deep into the Russian Federation with Western weapons has been lifted. That was stated by Defense Express expert, but there is another problem. There is nothing to strike with except for Ukrainian weapons with a range of 2.5 thousand kilometers. I'll remind you that just yesterday we got a very important thing, that according to information we have, US arms deliveries to Ukraine resumed over the weekend. So first United States of America resumed the weapon arms deliveries. Today we got information that most likely the Western countries, the United States of America, lifted any restrictions to attack deep inside the territory of Russia. So which means that in the very near future we should expect additional military package to Ukraine with most likely Western weapons, maybe Storm Shadows, maybe ATACMS missiles and so on. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and the most important updates are coming from the territory of the Sudzha, Sumi area. Today the Russian sources published the video on how they managed to discover the concentration of the armored forces of Ukraine in the area of this region of Sumi, and then the Russians began attacking this territory with Iskander missiles. As a result of this attack, the Ukrainian suffered significant losses. As for the beginning of the 5th of February, we still haven't received anything. I'm talking about the numbers provided by the Russian side about Ukraine losses, but most likely the losses were very heavy. And if we increase the numbers of days since the beginning of February, we're gonna see that the Russians attacked this territory at least 3 times. The first attack took place on the 2nd of February, and this attack took place in the vicinity of the city of Sumi to the south of the settlement. In this video we can see how the Russians managed to discover the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine, and as a result of Iskander strike, this temporary deployment point was destroyed. During that attack, the Russians didn't provide us any numbers regarding the Ukrainian losses. On the 4th of February, so yesterday, there was another attack that took place to the south of the settlement by the name of Pisarivka. In this video, the Russians managed to discover the concentration of forces of the 36th Marine Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine, and as a result of Tornado missile strike, Tornado system with the cluster rounds, the Ukrainians suffered significant losses, hundreds of soldiers and tens of vehicles cars and just regular transport equipment was destroyed. And today, on the 5th of February, we got another video published almost from the same area, from N07 road between the city of Sumi and the Suji direction, how the Russians destroyed another concentration of forces. This is very important videos that tell us that the Ukrainians most likely concentrated thousands of Ukrainians, thousands of soldiers, tens of hundreds of vehicles in the forest in the vicinity of Sumi, and there are just several options. Either the Ukrainians are planning to begin another wave of offensive operation, or the Ukrainians are waiting for Russian counterattack. So in the second case, of course, it's a very logical and smart step from the Russian side to destroy these reserves, and when these reserves are being destroyed, the Russians can begin their offensive, and maybe the next offensive can be the last offensive, when the defense of Ukrainians will collapse completely and the Ukrainians will be forced to begin the retreat process. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the north in Kupiansk direction. During the previous night, we received probably the biggest number of icons with flags from this area. We have 4 icons, as you can see. So let's discuss them in details. And first, we're going to talk about the most southern one. The Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians managed to improve their positions and to get a bit closer to the settlement of Kindrashevka. Also, we got icon with flag from the settlement of Novomlinsk. This information was provided us by the Russians. We received a message about the successes of the West group of the Russian armored forces in the Kupiansk direction. The 25th separate motorized rifle brigades assault troops are completing the cleanup of the settlement of Novomlinsk. So maybe today the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm this information. And if this happens, this is going to be the third settlement on the Ukrainian side of the river Oskol that was officially confirmed by the control over officially confirmed by the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. And the most important icons with flags are coming from the area along the border. As you can see, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to cross the river Oskol in another place, and as a result of this attack, the settlement of Topoli was semi-encircled. Very interesting situation, because this settlement is located very far from the line of combat contact, but the Russians for some reason decided to attack the settlement from their side of the river Oskol, not through the villages or forests or through the ground. Anyway, this is something like the second front line opened along the line of along the river Oskol, and now it's very interesting what the Russians are going to do next. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction, because we haven't received almost anything. No, let's discuss the city of Toretsk. During the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, we got video published by the Ukrainian side of how there were FPV droning and attacking the Russian units in this part of the city. I'll remind you that several days ago, the Ukrainians managed to restore control over this part of the settlement as a result of counter-offensive operation carried out by Lutz, probably assault battalion, and now the Russians, we see, managed to restore control over these territories, but anyway, we still haven't received report that the city of Toretsk was cleared by the Russians completely. Today, pro-Russian sources reported that the settlement of Baranovka was captured by the Russians, and right before we start making the video, another statement came from the settlement of Vadiana Druga. So as for now, the Russians, according to pro-Russian sources, control both settlements, Baranovka and Vadiana Druga. Now let's discuss the situation in the city of Pokrovsk. If you remember, yesterday we were talking that Ukrainians counterattacked the Russians in this area, and as a result of those counterattacks, the Ukrainians managed to restore control in the settlement of Kotlin. Not the entire village was recaptured, but some edge positions in the settlement was recaptured, and today we continue receiving updates from the same direction. Today, the Ukrainians published the video how they were counter-attacking the Russians in the area of the south eastern part of Kotlina. In this video, we can see the work of the separate storm assault battalion Skala 425, how the Ukrainians were clearing out trenches and counter-attacking the Russians. And in the final episode, we can see the Ukrainians entered the village again, landed infantry, and then in the final episode, we can see significant number of casualties from the Russian side. So this is another proof, another video that confirms Ukrainian control over this territory. Furthermore, today we got another video from the area of Pishana. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that the Ukrainians managed to enter the settlement, but they were ambushed by the Russian FPV drones and Ukraine suffered significant losses. Today we got another video and we have adjusted the map in Ukrainian favor based on this video, and in this video we can see how the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian units from this position. So this is the tank, Ukrainian tank, that approach some line of combat contact, and from these positions the Ukrainians were bombing the Russian units. So the Ukrainian tank was located here and Ukrainians were attacking in the western direction. So the Ukrainians were attacking some positions maybe here. Based on this video we have adjusted the map where the Ukrainian tank was located. So we see that when the Russians stopped their offensive operation in the Pokrovsk direction, the Ukrainians began counterattacks, and as a result of several counterattacks, the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions along the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Very interesting situation is coming from the Dnipro direction, and there are very heavy clashes in this area. Now there are very heavy clashes for the settlement of Nadezhnka. The Ukrainians and the Russians understand the value of this area. If we increase the numbers of this since the beginning of February, we'll understand the situation that is taking place here. During the previous 5 days we got several geolocations. One of the geolocation is coming from the northern part. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were bombing and attacking with drones Russian positions, which gave us the right to adjust the map in the Russian favor. Several days ago, on the 3rd of February, we got the video how the Ukrainians were attacking the most southwestern part of the settlement, how they managed to reach this area on Bradley, how they managed to land infantry, and we see that Ukrainians were trying to take under control several buildings here. But the Russians attacked this vehicle with the anti-tank missile and the Ukrainians were forced to fall back. Based on this video we haven't adjusted anything, but most likely we're gonna have to do this. And today we got another video how the Ukrainians on the same Bradley maybe were trying to outflank the Russians from the southeast and from the east, but the Russians managed to establish minefield and the Bradley was destroyed. So summarizing everything, we see that during the previous several days the Ukrainians were counter-attacking in the most southwestern part of the settlement, and today we see that Ukrainians were trying to attack in the most northeastern part of the settlement with the purpose to encircle the Russians that are currently located on the territory of Nadezhnka, but that vehicle was destroyed. So once again all these things confirm that there are very heavy clashes in this area, but as for now the Russians control the settlement, but nobody knows how the situation is going to be changed during the next several days. Now let's move further. As for the Kurakhova direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special, just regular activities. Also during the previous night the Ukrainians launched another massive drone strike all over the entire territory of Russia, and as a result of another drone attack another oil refinery was damaged and destroyed. And you know that Ukrainians today published very interesting statistics, and since the beginning of the special military operation indeed they managed to destroy a significant number of oil depots and oil refineries. Also, we got report that the Russians are about to begin the redeployment of their aircrafts among the fields, and this attack on Russian oil refinery completely, let's say, correlates with the pattern. Ukrainians always begin attack Russian oil refineries before the beginning of another massive missile strike, and every time another drone attack on Russian oil refinery forces the Russians to use less aircrafts in another massive missile strike. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.